Start recording. So welcome everybody. Welcome back to those of you who were with me 2 weeks ago, and welcome if you're new. My name is Beth Ritter-Guth, and some people call me Squeak. Lots of people call me lots of other things too, but Squeak works, and that's my trail name on the Appalachian Trail. Standard disclosure, because I mentioned this in the meetup, but I just want to mention it again. I am not an expert in anything except English, which I was a professor a long time, and now I'm an administrator. But I'm just a hobbyist who loves to be outside, and I spend a lot of time on the Appalachian Trail, spend a lot of time working with the Appalachian Trail community. And I've done this series because we have COVID going on, and people are really interested in learning more about backpacking before they actually go and do it. And when I looked on Meetup, there were some other classes, but you had to pay. And I thought that was nonsense. So I thought, well, the heck with it, I'll just do my own. So I broke them into 4 different topics. And this topic is probably the hardest one for folks because not a lot of people know how to read maps. And there's limited, it's much better if we could be in person together, right? I could show you, we could lay a map down, and we could put the compass down, and then you could play with the compass and learn how to make sure that it's pointing the correct north, because there's a correct north and an incorrect north. We're going to do some of that, but unfortunately, the in-person experience of having a map in front of us is hard to duplicate here. So what we do as people are coming in is if you look at the bottom of your screen, you have a whole bunch of different tools, and one of them is 3 little dots. And you have 3 little dots that you can click on, where you can click on reactions. So what I'd like to see is how many of you have gotten lost in the woods. So give a thumbs up if you have gotten lost in the woods, so that we can see that most of us have probably been lost once or twice in the woods. It's not letting me see you. How come I can't see you? So it'll look like that. Anybody ever been lost?
Me.
All right, thank goodness. All right, we have at least 4 people willing to admit that they have been lost in the woods. It happens, right? And sometimes, you're in the woods and you step off trail to go tinkle, and then you get back on trail and you head the wrong way, right? And trees look the same after a while. So this presentation is about map reading, but it's also about some tricks that I've come to learn over the course of my life, because I get lost a lot. And I do have actually good directional sense. I have a good direction of, sense of whether I'm going in the right direction or not. And, but I still get lost, because when you're in the backwoods, it all looks the same. And I spent a lot of time on the Appalachian Trail, where the white blazes are the same no matter which direction I'm going in, right? So I might be on the trail, but going the absolute wrong way. So we're going to talk about some of those hints and tricks. So, but I don't want to assume that you don't know anything. Oh my goodness, I can't even speak. I don't want to assume you're experts, because I'm not an expert. So what I'm going to do, it is 7:05. So I'm going to break you up into groups, and I want you in your group to talk about like the worst lost story among you. What is the best story or the funniest story? You'll have about 5 minutes to talk to each other to come up with the best story. Then we're going to come back and see if we can find the ultimate I got lost in the woods story. All right. So I'm going to split you into groups, and let's see. You only have 5 minutes or 7 minutes or something like that. I'll pop into the rooms to make sure that people aren't bored to death, but we won't do it too long. But just to get us thinking about the woods and getting lost. Why can I not find, there we are, breakout rooms. All right, so we're gonna go into, let's see, we're going to 4 groups. All right, so you only have 5 minutes. I'll give you a 1-minute warning when it's time to come out back, and you're coming up with the best got lost story of your group. See you in a little bit. And here they come. They're coming back. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Group one's chatty. They're not back yet. They're going to get booted out. They're going to get booted. Let me get my participant list up. All right. It's exciting. Did you guys have good story time? You can unmute yourself and chat. Was it good story time? They're so shy. All right.
I didn't get into much of the stories because my cat kicked me out of the meeting. So
my cat's over here playing with his, I gave him a new ball because my son accidentally stepped on his other ball and he is just chasing it around. So if you hear a bell, that's what it is. All right. So any good stories? How about, let's start with room 3. Any good stories in room 3? The ultimate get lost story.
We really only had one story. Everybody seemed to like have not got lost.
Oh,
I personally have backpacked on the Susquehanna Trail System for like 7 days. And friends from the Downtown Hiking Club came to meet us over a weekend. One of my friends and I like start talking and we missed the turn. About an hour, about a mile and a half later, I said to my friend, "You seen any blazes?" She says, "I don't know. You're in front." I'm like, that don't mean you shouldn't look for the blazes too. So we turned around and we were the last ones there. So everybody laughed at us because we were the first ones initially. And it was frustrating because we were going to a swimming hole and it was the middle of summer and we were the last ones to get there.
Oh, and all the water was already peed in.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, that is a good story. And that is often why we get off trails, because we get distracted by something, either a pretty sight or we can't see the blazes, right? That's a really good story. Room 1, what'd you guys come up with? You guys have tons and tons of stories to share?
No, we were all mostly beginners and haven't backpacked a whole lot.
That's okay. That's okay. That's why we're here. It was really just a getting to know you, warm up kind of thing. Warm up to the night. How about you, room 2?
Hi, I'm new.
Hello. Did you guys have any good stories?
I'm too new to even have a story.
That's okay. Let's hope you don't have any get lost stories. Let's hope that after tonight, you'll never have any get lost stories. How about room 4? Did you have any get lost stories?
I can't remember what room we were in.
What's your name? I'll tell you. Who's talking?
Judy Flapper.
All right. You were in room, Judy, you were in room 2.
Okay. See, I'm telling you, I have severe mom brain. So my lost story was I was out and about with my son in a state park. And we just kept going and going and going. I was one of those, we have time, let's just keep going. I don't have a good directional sense at all. So we were really, really lost. There wasn't anybody around. And then out in the middle of nowhere comes this like super outdoorsy guy. You could just tell by his presence. He's super outdoorsy. He's got the dog. He's got this and that. Well, lo and behold, he's just like, "Where did you park at?" I have no idea. He's just like, "Okay, I will get you back to your vehicle. We will find it." So lo and behold, he finally gets us back there. And then I come to find out like that guy, super outdoorsy man, was going to be on the TV show Alone. So his name is Dan Wowack.
I love that show.
And
I love that story. Naked and Alone?
No, not Naked and Alone.
Naked and Afraid. That's a different show.
Yeah. And he does have a big thing. His organization is Coal Cracker Bushcraft. He's all super outdoorsy and stuff. So yeah, that's my thing. I still have the sticker that he gave me. He was super nice. He did get me and my kid back to the car. I still don't have any kind of directional sense at all.
How many miles did you go? How many miles did you go all together?
I have no idea, but I know it started getting dark. When we left, it was full light, and then it was super dark almost when we got back to the car. So yeah, like I just like to go out, you know. I mean, maybe it's not a responsible thing, you know, and just like keep walking until you're tired. That's the thing. And then you go back. But the thing is, if you weren't paying attention to where you're going, you're not going to be able to get back sometimes. So he was like this big outdoorsy wood angel to me and my kid.
Oh, no, that's awesome. That's a really good story. I don't know if anybody in group 4, which by the way is Chris, Jennifer, Julie, Pamela, and Pat. Pat has a good story though. Pat, you have a good story of getting lost.
I don't know if my story was the best story in our group though. There was another story. But anyway, my story was just that, me and my girlfriend who used to hike together got lost in Nolde State Forest, and it was starting to get dark and the parking lot was going to be locked up and we were worried we weren't going to get out. So we had to call the park ranger, and the park ranger asked, well, whereabout are you? And we're like, well, we don't know. That's why we're lost. So we had to stand there, and luckily I had a whistle, and we had to blow the whistle until the park ranger came and got us. And we love that story because we took our pictures with the park ranger, and we're proud that we got lost and had to call the ranger.
And I had to use your whistle. Everybody thinks I'm a big old geek for having my whistle. I'm so glad that you used your whistle. That's
I did.
Well, what story could top these two in your group? These are great stories. Who else had a story in your group?
I have a story that I didn't share, but I didn't. Should I just say it now, or?
Sure.
Okay.
It's Confessions with BRG.
Yeah, it's not a great story. It's not all that exciting. It was at the very start of COVID when they closed all the trails in this area, and I was just going crazy. And I finished work, and it was getting dark. You know that time when you're saying, like, oh, I can do it. I know exactly how the sun sets, and I'll be,
yeah.
And you didn't take anything because you didn't think you'd be out that late, that kind of thing. So now, of course, I pack everything, but at that time I wasn't doing that. And I went to I think it was the Bridal Wild Trail, which is a very short trail. It's like a mile, 1.2 miles or something. But you would be surprised how long a trail can get when darkness falls and you have no idea how to get back. So I'm sitting there thinking, oh, this is fine. It's fine. I'll just backtrack. And then, of course, backtracking was like the trail changed and the all trails map was wrong. And a river appeared where it wasn't supposed to. And it was totally pitch black now. And I couldn't see a thing in front of me. Like there was no moon, and I didn't have a compass, and I don't really know how to use a compass anyway. So it probably wouldn't have helped. And my phone was dying. I was on like 10%, and I'm thinking, but I'm thinking, no, but I'm fine. And then I don't know how I found my way out of it. It's not really a story except a warning story. Like you should pack. First of all, you should know how to use a compass. You should know where you are on the compass. You should always have a headlamp with extra batteries, and don't rely on your iPhone. So it was one of those. And also, don't think that a place that like the back of your hand is going to look the same in pitch black with no moon. So those are all my lessons.
I'm really glad you told that story because, after we're safe, we were like, oh, phew, but it is terrifying to be in the woods, especially if you weren't planning to be out at dark and you don't have a headlamp. The forest never looks the same, even at twilight, even when you have a little bit of highlight, because shadows play with your mind. And now you're nervous, and there's a little trick that you can take your hand. I don't know if you can see my hand, but you take your hand and your fingers and you put it between the horizon and the sun, and each finger is 15 minutes. So that sun is going down, right, in an hour.
Right.
So, and then you get nervous. And so that's a good story because, you should always have a headlamp. Even if you're going just for a day trip and you think you're going to leave at 7, you should still have a headlamp, and always check your batteries before you leave and make sure they're fresh batteries, and always have a paper map with you, and always have a plan. Like if you do get lost, who are you going to call, and make sure that person has a copy of your map. Right, that they kind of know where you are supposed to be, so that it's easier for the responders to come find you. right? So great. That's a great story. The room 4, I think, had all the stories because there's another story in that room. Who's the other story in that room?
Whoever had the iron story.
Who had the iron story? What's the iron story?
Oh, that was.
Oh, that was me. That was me. Could you guys hear me?
Yes, 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 yes.
No, well, yeah, I should preface by saying, like, I actually do have a lot of experience with this because of my job. I work outside for a living, so land navigation is a really important part of it. But there was a time I was out with my crew, and we were out in the middle of the woods, and we all had compasses, and everyone's compass was pointing in a different direction, which was the craziest thing. And luckily, we still knew where we were, but it was very unnerving. And the only thing we could, we were guessing is we were on some kind of like area with like a lot of, iron deposits or something like that, which I've heard that could actually mess with things. And I've seen that before in other projects where, two compasses next to each other aren't consistent. It's a very strange thing. But again, it's this kind of scenario. Like I always think just have redundant forms of, knowing your way. Like I never go out into the woods without having multiple, like even for myself, like sometimes multiple compasses. You could have a compass that can get a bubble, an air bubble in it, and it can mess it up. But anyway, yeah, that's strange. That hasn't happened very often, but it's definitely a little bit unnerving when, what you're relying on could fail you.
Absolutely. And that's a really good point about compasses, because compasses, when we talk about magnetic north, like true north, and and the way that your compass points, a lot of people will follow just north on a compass, regular compass, without setting it, and then they're going completely off course because they haven't set the compass. And the cheaper compasses, like that you hang on your backpack, you can't set them, right? So you really should have a proper compass, and we're going to get to that. So thank you for participating with your colleagues here. We're going to be talking about choosing the right map, topographic, road, and trail. We're going to start with trail maps because most of us as beginning hikers are going to use simple trail maps because we're going to be going on simpler trails. Topographic maps are the very best maps for hikers, but that's if you're backpacking for a few days, if you're going to terrain that is very backwoods and isn't established already. And I wouldn't recommend that as a new hiker, right? So new hikers should always go on well-established trails. And so that's the best advice. But as you grow as a hiker and as you grow as a backwoods person in the backcountry, there are whole classes devoted to compass reading. So like in the hour we're going to spend tonight, I'm going to give you some tips, but there's whole classes, and you can certify in it. And orienteering is like a whole hobby that people have. But it's important to know that compasses aren't always the same, and that compasses can, they're not fail safe. So it's important to have, I love that you said this, redundant resources to rely on when you're in the woods. And the first thing that you should always have is a printed out paper map of wherever you're going, especially if it's a new place. So I'm gonna talk about these 4 things, but I'm gonna unshare and then reshare so that I can show you what a map looks like. I'm gonna show you what a trail map looks like just for a state park. We're gonna look at Beltsville State Park's trail map. There are many apps that are out there. The best one of them for all different kinds of hikings is the All Trails map, and people record their hikes. And so we're gonna talk about the blazing. There are different kinds of blazes. The Appalachian Trail has a very specific blaze, but other trails just have whatever kind of blazing system and coloring system that particular park uses. Sometimes it's white, sometimes it's pink, sometimes it's green. And if they have a lot of trails in their park, there can be intersections. And so you have to kind of figure out ahead of time what you want your trip to look like. And then in some places, like in Lehigh Gap here in Palmerton, where I live, the Appalachian Trail, which is a white blaze trail, crosses with an old woods trail, which is also blazed white, but they're not the uniform white blazes of the Appalachian Trail. So it can get real confusing up in there. I'm going to talk about some tricks that I've come to use with my trekking poles and how I use them to make sure that I'm facing the right direction when I'm stop off to go tinkle or if I'm camping, and then how I face my tent so I know which direction to go in the morning. So quick question. Where does the sun set, in the east or the west? That noise, I'm very sorry, that's my cat playing. Does the sun set in the east or the west?
West.
West,
And it rises in the
east.
east. So you can always use the sun if the sun's out, and you can see you can always figure out direction quickly. If you fall and you're in danger, you can quickly look to see where the sun is, right? When does the sun cross over? At what time does the sun cross to the other side?
Noon.
Noon, right? So if it's before noon, right, it's going to be on which side?
East,
East.
west.
It's afternoon.
West.
Right. So that's a quick way to know. And where does the moon come up? If the moon's out, which side is that coming up?
East.
Right.
Oh.
So it's a big, you know, it's a big circle, right? So if you have to just quickly figure out which way is east and west, then you can use the sun. So that's one way to do it. And you know, we're going to go into some other little tips. So let me unshare so I can show you. Oh wait, first I want to do this. I want to show you this. So does this look familiar? What is this? What is this we're looking at?
Trail markers.
These are trail markers, right? And these are consistent no matter what trail you're on. This is the standard accepted trail marker system. So your start of trail is here, end of trail is here, right? So you're
I
going
can't see
for,
what you're looking at.
you can't see my screen?
No, and I've got all the dialogue coming up and I don't want that. So I don't know how to change that.
What do you see in front of you? Do you see me?
No, I see somebody with a funky blue glasses Jeep and Kristen, and I saw Beth, I saw you, but
All right, let me
I don't know
reshare.
how
Let me see if you see it now. Do you see this now?
No.
Okay, I do have
I think-
transition on. Go ahead.
I think
I
it's
just
her
see
view, how she has the view set up at the top.
All right, so at the top of your screen,
Yeah.
what should she click on?
I have mine on side-by-side gallery. I don't know what anybody else is using, but
Let me see. Whoops. I don't know.
Does everybody else see the trail markers?
Yeah, side by side.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm on
Yep,
my
I see it.
phone. Oh, okay. I see.
So am I.
If you're on
I
your
see
phone,
me. I see Beth, and I see Jim, but I don't see. And I see all the words coming up as we're speaking. I don't know how to turn that off.
You can't turn that off. That's transcription because we have somebody with us who's deaf.
Click-
Oh,
flick your finger and it'll go to different views. One will be a single view, one will be multi-party view, and then one will be looking at what Beth's showing you.
yeah. But with Beth, all I see is her face. I don't see anything.
Do it again. Move over one more.
Yeah. And I see mine. Jim.
Do you want to try going out and coming back in and see if it'll reset your view?
Yeah, I could do that. Hold on.
All right, I'll let you right back in.
Because we all got kicked out for some reason. And then when I came back in, this is all I had. So hang on. Because I'm really a newbie and I don't know what the heck I'm doing.
No worries.
Full view, full transcript, no meeting settings.
Because I can't see your screen.
Yeah. I don't know. Share?
No, don't share.
No. Oh, there's a little thing in the bottom. Let's see. Oh, okay. I see. No, I just see what you're seeing. Continuous straight, that thing?
Yep.
Okay, I blew it up.
Perfect. So these are go ahead.
I only see black boxes. I don't see anything in them.
That's all right. Do you see like there's a big chunk in continue straight? And then in start of trail, there are 3, one that's sort of pointing forward. Do you see that?
Yeah, I just see black boxes.
Yep. So when you're on the trail, no matter what color, these are called blazes, and no matter what color they are, whether they're white for the Appalachian Trail, or if they're green or purple or pink or orange, they try to use like bright colors like that, but green and blue, they use those too. They will be in this pattern because this is the accepted universal pattern, except that some older trails, like if you're old, some older trails used to carve these into the trees. So if you're on a very old trail, sometimes you'll find them. They don't do that anymore because obviously that's not Leave No Trace, but they did that before Leave No Trace. They would carve these in. So you see that most trails have gone back through and painted. But if you come across that, take a picture because that's very unique, and then they don't do it anymore. And now they're starting to grow over, right? So certain parts of the Appalachian Trail have both the white blazes, but then also the indentations. And it's cool when you see them.
I was gonna ask what a blaze was, but I guess now that is.
No, that's okay. These are blazes. So when you get on a trail, the start of trail blaze is here, and you know that it's the start of trail because it's kind of like your foot forward. So your 2 feet are together, and then you're going to take a step forward. And then the end of the trail is you're standing still, and then you're going to back up, right? So that's how you remember and stop. And then the tricky ones that people always get confused, or at least I got confused when I was first hiking, is right turn and left turn. So you see over here, right turn is your right foot forward, left turn is your left foot forward. So
Okay.
that's how you can remember: right foot forward, left foot forward.
Gotcha.
And most of the time you're going to see this continue straight, which is just the single trail. Now, keep an eye on, especially now because of COVID, a lot of trails have not been maintained. The Appalachian Trail has not been maintained for a year, right? Because of COVID. So there's going to be blowdowns and things. So you're going to think, oh, and there's vegetation growing over. So you want to always look ahead for that next blaze and make sure that you're seeing the next blaze. And so you want to, the person, when you go on a hike, especially in a group hike, you're going to have a person at the front who is called the lead, and a person in the back who's called a sweep. And the lead is responsible to make sure that the group is following that. And if you're alone, you want to always make sure that every couple of minutes you're just looking up and looking for that blaze. And anytime that you get to a split, anytime you get anywhere that you kind of just aren't sure which way to go, or you get to a stream crossing, make sure that you can find the very next blaze. And they're always set, you know, in a well-blazed trail, they're always set a few, feet apart. So you'll be able to see one from, where you're standing. You should be able to see the next one. But trails are well blazed, which is why the paper map is important. Right? Okay. Right foot forward, left foot forward. And then spur is when a new trail is coming, right? So you might be going to a new trail. So you're going to go to the side trail. Right. And so on the Appalachian Trail, for example, there are a lot of what are called blue blazes. That's the color that Appalachian Trail uses for side trails. And that could take you to, a really cool lookout, or blue blazes to the shelter. Sometimes they'll use brown blazes for shelters if there's no lookout or something. So there are sometimes trails that kind of go off the main trail. And so you want to pay attention to those trails. And sometimes they have signs and sometimes they don't. If you are doing the Appalachian Trail and you're very passionate about the Appalachian Trail, I recommend an app called Gut-Hook, which actually has whatever, you can buy all the states or just one state or whatever, but it has all of the water sources where you can find water. It has all the shelters listed, and you can follow that pretty well. And it has topographic overlay so that you can kind of see the topography of where you're going. But for a basic trail map, this is what it looks like when you're actually hiking on the trail. You're going to look for these blazes, and you want to make sure that you know what color you're following. Any questions before I unshare this and share a map?
Where's the Appalachian Trail?
That's a great question. The Appalachian Trail is a 2,200-mile footpath that goes, if you're going northbound, it starts in Springer Mountain, Georgia, and goes to Mount Katahdin at Baxter State Park in Maine. And it goes through all of the states between Georgia and Maine, so 19 states. And it's there are people who through hike it. So they'll take 6 months off from their life and they will hike the whole trail. Then there are section hikers. That's Jim. Are you Jim the section hiker? I'm not sure if that's Jim the section hiker or a different Jim. I didn't think Jim the section hiker could come tonight. So some people do long section hikes. And so they do more than 100 miles at a time. And then some people are just day hikers that like to hike on the Appalachian Trail because of its history.
That's me.
And it's a federal trail. So interesting, like a little interesting tidbit. And this isn't to be political or anything, but just an interesting tidbit. When all of the trails closed down because of COVID, the Trump administration did not close the Appalachian Trail. So technically you could walk from Georgia to Maine. However, if you were in a state that closed any surrounding services or any state parks that the trail went through, you could get off of trail and get arrested. So the Appalachian Trail is a federal trail and it's a long trail. There are 3 long trails. Let's see, for people who were here 2 weeks ago, what are the 3 long trails that make up the Triple Crown?
Pacific Crest Trail.
Appalachian,
Pacific Crest
Rim,
Trail? What did you say?
Pacific Rim,
I'm so sorry. It's so distorted.
Pacific Rim.
Pacific Rim, no. Good.
Continental Divide Trail.
Continental Divide make up the Triple Crown. So if anybody says to you, I'm a Triple Crowner, they've done those 3 long trails, but there are a ton of long trails. Pam was, I don't know why I call you Pam because I know your name is Pat. Pat was in my texting today telling me to do the Vermont Long Trail. So I'm all for that. We have to do that in the fall. If we're gonna do it this year, we have to do it early next year.
So you looked at it. It looks cool, doesn't it? But hard.
It does, hard, but you know what? We're gonna be awesome. We're gonna be able to do it. We'll go slow. We just won't.
Okay.
We're not gonna do a marathon. So
Push each other up those ladders.
or pull.
I'm just looking to do a couple miles here and there. Like,
That's what most of our hikes are.
Oh, okay. So this is kind of advanced for this group, right?
Well, so trail navigation is important for everybody to know, even if you're only doing like a 2-mile hike, because let's say you're doing a 2-mile hike in the Beltsville system, where a lot of the trails cross and you might get lost. So you might think you're out doing a 2-mile hike and end up doing a 7-mile hike by accident because you got off trail and got onto some other trail. Right. So that's why we're offering this. So for our group, the day hikes that we do, they are always 3 miles and under for the turtle hikes. The turbot hikes sometimes will be longer and be like 5 miles or 7 miles. And my hikes, when I run them, are they're easy hikes for new hikers or for hikers who like to go slower. And then the turbot hikes, which are sort of like the middle range, they're a little bit faster or have a little bit more incline. I try not to do a whole lot of incline, like steep ups and steep downs, so people can get out and enjoy it, see if they like it. Backpacking trips, depending on where we go, the terrain will vary, because like if you want to go to the White Mountains, like we're doing a White Mountain trip, in New Hampshire, I don't know what the terrain is like. So I was told by the ranger that the terrain is reasonable for new hikers. And there's a difference between new hikers and easy hikes for experienced hikers and easy hikes for new hikers. That's a different thing. So when he and I talked, he said he thought it would be reasonable for the group. So, but I'm going on his word, and sometimes, they have high hopes. So we'll just take it by ear. And I always have the map available to everybody that they can print out before they come for our hikes. So good questions, excellent comments and questions. So let me show you what a map looks like so that you can see what it looks like. This is Beltsville. And hopefully you can see, do you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, so I want to show you the parts of a map. Right. So the most important part you want up here is up here, and it's the legend for the map. And so the top and the bottom, and every map is different where they put this stuff, but every map has a legend, right? And it'll tell you, like, here's the park office, here's the restrooms, here are the hiking trails, right? So it's going to be the the 2 straight dashes. Multi-use is biking and hiking. Sometimes parks will have horseback riding also. And some parks have ATV also. So be aware of the kind of trail that it is, because if it is an ATV trail or if it's a biking trail, people will plow you over. And my hiking partner is deaf and she does not hear things coming up behind her. So she has a patch that says deaf hiker on her backpack, but people who are going that fast riding a bike don't necessarily know that. So we try to stay away from trails that allow biking on them because they come up too fast on her. The Appalachian Trail biking is not allowed and horseback is not allowed. So, and ATV is not allowed. So that's only a footpath. So that's one of the advantages to the Appalachian Trail. So every map has a legend and every map will tell you its scale and why that's important. Well, let's see. Do you know why does anybody know why this is important? Why is the scale important? What does this tell us? Oh,
How far you're gonna go.
how far and how much coverage this map includes, right?
Oh, yeah, right.
Right. So every map has a different scale. So it's going to tell you that, how many feet this is going to cover. So you can kind of guess how long a trail is, right? So, and I'm going to show you some better examples of this. Does anybody know what these lines are? What are these lines, these contour lines? What are they?
Where are you pointing?
Isn't it?
Oh, does this not highlight? Do you not see my mouse highlighting? Darn it. All right. So if you look at the lake, Beltsville Lake, where it says Beltsville Lake, see the little circular lines there? There's the dash where there's a trail for.
Oh, yeah.
And then there are those tiny little lines. What do those lines mean?
That's
Elevation.
Yeah, elevation.
That's the elevation. So if they're closer together, what does that mean?
Steeper.
It's steep.
It's steeper, right? And if they're wider, they are
A slower elevation.
slower elevation. So if you're looking at a map and you see, I thought my pointer pointed, so I apologize that, but if you look over sort of toward like the grayish part over by where it kind of highlights Beltsville, that circle there, you can see that that's probably, not that steep an incline. But if you're looking at Trinity Gorge Trail, the trail itself is not in an inclined place, but you're part of that trail is going to be looking up a mountain, right? It's going to be a big hill, right? So you can kind of get a feel, and the bigger the map and the more detail to the topography, the more you can tell about the kinds of trees that are involved. You can get more information about, one thing you can't get a whole lot of information about is rocks, but you can get some information about rocks if it's rocky, because here in Lehigh Gap, this is the worst of the rocks on the Appalachian Trail until you get up north. So a lot of northbound hikers that started in Georgia and now have hit the halfway mark. The spiritual halfway mark of the Appalachian Trail is in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. The actual halfway mark is in Pine Grove Furnace State Park. There's an ice cream challenge that the thru hikers do where they try to eat a gallon of ice cream. I think it's in an hour. It's disgusting. I couldn't even do that in a day, but they eat a whole gallon of ice cream. They get a little wooden spoon. But if they've hiked northbound, it's May or June by the time they get here, that they've been looking forward to that ice cream challenge and that tradition. And then, they're not looking forward to anything now until they get to New England, because they've heard that Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York are boring, and they've heard that Pennsylvania is rocky. So they call Pennsylvania Rocksylvania, because when you get to Lehigh Gap, which is Palmerton, Slightington area, it is extremely rocky, and it's the first time that they're dealing with rocks. So there's no way to see that on a map, right? You can see the steepness, but they're used to that because they've been going up and down mountains, since Georgia. But the rocks add to the terrain, and so it's important to learn about a trail and what kind of rocks are going to be there. Are you going to be climbing over boulders? Are you going to have to climb up boulders? Because, if you have a full backpack on and you have to carry your weight plus the weight of your pack up a boulder, if you're backpacking, that can be difficult, right? If you don't have great knees, climbing boulders is not a great idea for your first hike out there. So this is just an example of a kind of map. And I like that Beltsville has all of the different details. So they have, they've on this particular map, they have all of the trails are marked. Trinity Gorge is one that I've done a few times. That's a really nice trail. Water maps are slightly different, but you can tell some things from this about the water and where you can kayak and where the no wake zone is. What's a no wake zone? Anybody know?
No,
Boats have to go slow.
no boats,
No motors.
no boats allowed, no motorboats, okay, yeah.
No motors. You can have kayaks, but no motors. So I like to go to, so I often will park at, I kayak on flat water, so I'll often park at Preacher's Camp because that's a no wake zone, because sometimes the boats go so fast and they make such big waves that, you know, they're tossing my kayak everywhere. So I like to go where it's no wake. So this is just an example of a trail map that you might pick up when you're at a location. Hopefully you've done research before you've gone to the trail and gotten your map sooner. And most maps are available online through All Trails, or if you Google a name of a trail, it'll come up. All Trails, and I'll show that to you just so that if you haven't seen it before, there's a free version and then there's a paid version. And if you're really into backpacking and hiking, I definitely recommend paying for this app. But if you're new to it, you can just, you know, the free one is good enough. You don't need all kinds of fancy, you know, the fancy additions unless you really hike a lot. Somebody throw out a location and I'll type it in.
Hickory Run.
Hickory Run?
Yeah.
Hickory Run.
Fireline Trail. Oh, there it is.
Hickory Run State Park. You type that in and it'll tell you the best trails. And what I like about this, and this is a little bit of review for those of you who were with me before, you can actually sort by difficulty. So if you're a brand new hiker, just pick easy and it'll bring up all of the easy trails. Now remember, these are written by people who may be experienced hikers and find it easy. So the easy rating itself may not be enough information. Look at the length, right? If you know that you don't want to do 100 miles and you only want to go at the most, let's say 4 miles, you do that and it'll resort. All right. So there are two, now we're down to 2. If you don't want one with a lot of gain, you know, and you want to do like maybe 600 feet or 700 feet, right? So this one doesn't have a lot of elevation gain, right? And this is a route. So a loop is a complete circle. Out and back, you're going to walk somewhere and you're going to walk back. A lollipop is you're going to walk out.
We can't find it, comma. We can always order it and wait until we get the package. Period.
Okay. So a lollipop is you're going to walk out, you're going to go in a circle, and then you're going to come back that straight point. And point to point is you're going to walk from one place to another and then do something different when you get there. Some people will rate the hikes. You know, I always read the comments. Let's read the comments for Fireline. It's ranked as a 4 out of 5. But I'm a little bit. I read the comments with a little bit of skepticism because some folks are very experienced and will say like the hike is too easy, or they'll say it's too crowded or whatever. So you just have to know what you want. But see here, this button where it says print PDF map, you can print the map for it. It'll give you the map. You can also have the app up on your phone while you're hiking, but as somebody wisely said in here earlier, don't rely on your phone because you may not have reception and you may run out of battery life. So you definitely want this paper map. So when we're looking at this map and we're looking at this trail, is this a steep hike?
No,
It's flat. How do we know it's flat?
not a lot of contour lines.
Not a lot of contour lines, right?
Yes, can I interject at the moment?
Sure.
The contour lines, some maps have this, the elevation as it changes on the contour lines or every 5th one.
Yep.
And that can make a difference because sometimes they're 50, sometimes they're 100, sometimes they're 200. So you really need to look at that part if you have that on your map, because if it's 200, it could be really steep.
Yes, that is a really great point. So at the bottom of every map, I don't know if this one has it. Yeah, at the bottom of this one, do you see the bottom of this map?
Yeah, it's kind of cut off with all
Right.
the other things underneath. There you go.
Alright, so I don't know if you can see all my stuff, but if you see it, you can scan it, which is the nice thing about All Trails, and you can put it on your phone and have an offline copy. I wish I could move does this move the transcription for everybody? Did that move?
No.
everybody?
No.
No,
Oh, yeah, you
there you
go.
go.
There
there
it
you go.
is. Yeah.
Okay, so you can see at the bottom, this legend is so important, and this is important for a compass reading too. See how we're going to start over here. This is a QR code, so you can download this map onto your phone. This here is how you set your compass, because there's magnetic north and then there's true north, the north that you want. And so when we talk about the compass, you have to set your compass based on your map when you're in the field where you are. And this is the scale. And as I can't see names, I'm not sure who was talking. Every map is different about what distance they have between the contour lines. And it's usually every fifth one is bolded, and it'll say how many feet it is. So it could be super, super steep. And you want to make sure that you know what this means, right? And then, this will show sort of see how it's on All Trails. If you start, I don't know if you can see my cursor at the bottom. At mile 0, it shows the terrain. Do you see one across?
No, I'm not able to see. It's behind the printing. Is it possible to move the map up above that so we could see the cursor?
I'm not sure. When I do this, you see the top.
I see the
Yeah.
top.
Okay, when I scroll to the bottom, do you see the bottom?
Yeah, but the printing goes across it, so it's
Yeah.
hard to see your cursor.
Okay, all right, I don't have the same view that you see. If you go on All Trails, you can play with this yourself. So at the very bottom of the print PDF of a map, there will be where you can actually go right across the trail, and it will tell you at each part of the trail how steep it is. And
Okay.
incline and decline is. And when you see the recording, you'll see it on my recording because it's on my screen, which is a really nice feature of All Trails. So you know exactly what you're getting into before you go, right? And that's great. And you can look at other trails and practice. So I'm sorry that you can't see that. I have to unshare and then reshare again my slides so that I can show you some stuff about compasses, because I can't believe we're almost done.
Can I say one more thing about the All Trails?
Sure.
One thing I love using All Trails for is that a lot of people are really, they're really enthusiastic about talking about the weather and the conditions on the trail, meaning even if you know the trail, go on. It's a great idea to go on to All Trails just to see, sometimes you don't, like, I typically don't think it's going to be muddy, and that can be treacherous when it's muddy. So depending on the trail, if it's, steeper. So All Trails visitors will often put, trails were muddy today, or muddy last week, but great now, so, and frozen, not frozen, that kind of thing. And sometimes it's something you wouldn't expect. So I like going on just to see, has anyone written anything about these trails recently? Because All Trails, I think the visitors are pretty, if they see something that's unusual, they'll put it down. So.
And if there's any blowdowns, and that's especially important now because a lot of trails weren't maintained over the last year.
Right.
So
Or
like critical
changes,
information.
or if parts are closed, sometimes, it's not posted on the state website. So, yeah.
And one of the, definitely a cautionary tale is that All Trails is not updated very often. So there are some trails on there that are actually discontinued, and one of them is Glenanoco. So if you're from the Jim Thorpe area, they had to close a trail 2 years ago because they were just getting so many EMS calls because people weren't following the directions and following the trail signs, and were doing sketchy things and had to be rescued. And it's really expensive and hard to get the equipment up there, and cracking their skulls on the waterfalls there. So they closed the trail, but when you look for that trail, it is still in All Trails. So I always take the name of a trail and I Google it. You put quotation marks around it and Google it. Lots of people blog, lots of people do live video for YouTube. So anytime I'm looking at a trail, been more conscious of this with the restart group, is looking at the trail ahead of time. And I try to do the trail myself if I can ahead of time too, just to get a good sense of what the trail conditions are. And like right now we have all this snow melting. So trails are going to be muddy. They're going to be run out. The Appalachian Trail becomes like a river because it's such a well-grooved trail that it becomes like a river, and then you're walking through water. So I wouldn't take people out on it if it freezes at night, if it's freezing. So you want to definitely read all trails. That's a really good suggestion. So to keep moving.
Is there an app that, or a particular blog that you found to be active? Or you just Google it and you look for it?
I use the one that I use the most, and remember that I hike a lot on the Appalachian Trails. I read the Trek a lot. That's like my favorite blog. Is the Trek, because it talks about the Appalachian Trail. I follow a lot of people on Facebook too that do hikes. Like there's Backpacking Pennsylvania, hiking Backpacking Pennsylvania.
That's a good idea.
People post their hikes in there, and I'll find some blogs that are really, really good. And it's funny because 52 hikes, they always have really active content because people are posting their hikes for their 52 hike challenge, 100-mile hikes. And I could put a list together of some of the ones that I watch. And there's some people like if you're really interested in backpacking, it's a little bit old. She threw hike 2 years ago, but there's a woman named Dixie. That was her trail name. And she did amazing videos through her through hike that are for like basic, like the basics of backpacking a long trail. And her videos are sensational. I learned a lot from her, even though I'd been backpacking a long time.
Great.
Had to pee in the woods. So this is what we went over. We went over every map has a title. Make sure that it's a current map, right? You don't want to use a map from 2010 if there's a newer map available. Because like, for example, right now we are rerouting the Appalachian Trail in Palmerton. So that the maps that exist now are not going to be current 3 years from now when that trail is done. So definitely make sure that you're looking at the date. Make sure that you're looking at the grid references, right? A map is broken up into grid boxes with the first 2 or 3, depending on how big it is, with the X value and then the Y value. The north, a map always points up, right? So north is at the top of that map. And then you want to look at the scale, whether it's 1 to 25,000 or 1 to 50,000, right? You just want to know when you're looking at it. And for the kind of hikes that you do as a new hiker, you probably don't need all of this information, but it's just good to know as you're learning about hiking. If you want to practice with your compass, right, you can go around with your compass and do a simple hike, but practice with your compass. And like I said, there are 2 different kinds of compasses. There are the kind that have the whistle on it that are like cheap that you buy at the dollar store, because all compasses point north. But remember, like we saw on that map, the magnetic north is not the same, right, as true north. So what does that mean? What does magnetic north mean? Does anybody know?
There's an offset between magnetic north and your location to true north. And it depends on where you're at on the earth.
And which one should you follow? Should you follow magnetic?
Not true north. You need to follow you have to have the declination that it's off by.
Right.
So you can reset yourself.
Right. So on a good compass, there is going to be, and we're gonna watch a little video that can explain this so much better than I can. I kept trying to write notes about how to do this, and I'm like, you know what? REI's, there are 2 videos here that they do a sensational job teaching map and compass. You want to have the kind of compass where you can adjust the declination, right? So the little ones don't do that. They're going to just always show you magnetic north. So always be aware that those kind of compasses can't be reset, and you're not able to reset the declination. So they'll give you a general sense, but they aren't going to be completely accurate. The ones that you might strap on your backpack. The true compasses where you open it up and you set it down, or it's flat and it has the ability to you'll see in a second what it's going to look like. Just know that there are 2 different kinds of compasses, right? And then somebody mentioned earlier, and this is a great point, there are some places where compasses don't work. because of what's in the ground. So be aware of that. All right, so we're going to watch this very brief video together. And I believe I have, everybody see the video?
Yep.
Hopefully you all hear it too. So let me know right away if you don't hear it, okay?
Topographic maps are a little different from your average map. Not only do they show the location of things like roads and trails, but once you get the hang of reading them, they also help you visualize three-dimensional terrain from a flat piece of paper. Topo maps use three main mechanisms to describe the terrain. In this video, we're going to cover how to read the map's contour lines, how to understand scale, and how to read the symbols and colors found in the map's legend. Contour lines are what really make topographic maps something special. These lines connect all the points on the map that share the same elevation. By looking at how the contour lines spread out and come together, you can get a good sense of what the terrain looks like. When the lines are packed close together, that tells you that the elevation is changing a lot in a short distance, so the terrain is quite steep. As the lines spread out, the elevation changes more slowly, so the slope is more mellow. Contour lines can also help you visualize the shape of the terrain. For example, as the lines form smaller and smaller circles, they're probably showing a peak. Spend some time with a map of a familiar area and see if you can pick out terrain features just by looking at the contour lines. Every fifth contour line on a topo map is thicker than the others, and those thick lines are called index lines. At some point along every index line, you'll find the elevation for that line written on the map. The change in elevation from one contour line to the next is always the same on the map. And most maps have either a 40 or 80-foot contour interval. If your map has an 80-foot interval, that means that each contour line is 80 vertical feet away from the next. You can find all the specific details about the contour intervals and index lines for your map in its legend. Scale refers to the relative distance of the map. For instance, this map scale is 1 to 12,000. That means that 1 inch on the map represents 12,000 inches in reality. Another map of the same region is 1 to 50,000 and covers a larger area, but in less detail. The important thing is that the map with a smaller scale will show a smaller area, but with more detail. Understanding the level of detail on your map is handy when planning your route, but it isn't much help if you want to calculate distances efficiently. That's why maps also have a small representative scale near their legend. This scale shows you the relative distance of a mile or a kilometer on your map, and you can use the edge of a compass or even a piece of string to help figure out just how far away that peak is. One of the first things to look for on any new map is the legend. The legend is like the user's guide for your map. It's where the various lines, colors, and symbols are defined. When it comes to the colors on the map, the idea is that the darker the color, the denser the vegetation. As you get closer to the top of a peak, you'll notice that the colors get lighter as the forest thins out. And of course, streams and lakes are represented in blue. Alongside the list of symbols, there are a few other important pieces of information, like details about the contour lines and the date of the map's most recent revision. This is also where you'll find the magnetic declination for the region, which you'll use to set up your compass. When you combine your understanding of contour lines, scale, and your map's symbols and colors, you can almost visualize your whole trip before you go. The next step in becoming a backcountry navigator is to learn how to use your compass alongside your map. So click here to check out that video, or click here to find a navigation class near you.
All right, so that's a really good overview, and REI does have classes. I don't know if they're running them during COVID, but if you're interested in map reading and getting more into it, I definitely recommend them. For our new hikes, we probably don't need that great a detail, but you definitely want to get a park map. And if you're confused about the trail, stop in and talk to the rangers. The rangers are always there to help you at a state park, and they will give you information, but you definitely don't want to be planning your hike while you're standing at the trailhead, right? You want to have thought about your route, looked up to see if there was any blowdowns ahead of time before you get there. So,
excuse me, Beth.
Sure.
What's a blowdown?
A blowdown is when a tree falls down over the top of the trail. So, and because normally during a regular hiking season, state parks and the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, you would report it. So like I'm hiking along, I see a tree has come down and I can't cross the trail because it's in my way. I'll let the ATC know, or I'll let Beltsville know that there's a tree down. And before COVID, you know, somebody would come out from a trail club, or in the state parks, the rangers would come out and they would cut it up and clear the trail. But because of COVID, a lot of trails did not get maintained this year. So if there's a blowdown, you know, trees, rocks move themselves and they're on the trail and you can't pass. Sometimes you can walk under one. We did a winter trail this weekend where there was a blowdown, but we could all get underneath it. We took a cool picture underneath it because it's been that way for a very long time. And so the maintainers of that trail don't see a risk to it and left it there. And sometimes you'll see trees that are on the trail that you walk over, but it's easy enough to get over top of them. But sometimes, you know, a storm comes and, you know, after Hurricane Sandy, for example, lots of trees came down and lots of trails had to be cleared. Good question, though.
Thank you.
That's a good question. All right, so to keep us moving, I'm going to show you this little video about how to use a compass. And it is using a compass. There are whole classes about using a compass. So it is okay if you don't understand everything that you read. What I really want you to get out of this is that you should have a compass. You should know there's a difference between magnetic north and true north, and to make sure that you have a map with you, right? Because most people use a map. Most people I talk to do not know how to use a compass. You will know after tonight, you will know way more about a compass than most of the people who hike the entire Appalachian Trail, because a lot of people don't use a compass because it's confusing. So don't feel bad if you don't pick it up. If it is interesting to you, and there are tons and tons of great videos out there done by REI, done by the Trek, that you can really learn more about compass use. It's good to have one with you just so that you can get a general sense of where north and south are and east and west are if the sun's not out or if the moon's not out because it's cloudy. It'll even just the basic ones that you wear that you get at Walmart or whatever, the ones that are not the full-fledged compasses will at least get you in the general north sense, right? But that doesn't mean anything if you don't know what is in front, what is north, right? If you don't have a map telling you what's north of you, it won't make any sense. So, but we'll watch this together and then we'll see if anyone has any questions.
A compass is part of the 10 essentials, and most people take one with them into the mountains. But how in the world does it work? Luckily, it isn't too hard to use your compass. And when paired with a good map and a bit of know-how, it becomes a powerful tool for navigation. In this video, we're going to cover the essential parts of the compass, how to set up your compass to account for the declination for your region, how to take a bearing from a map to find an object in the field, and how to take a bearing in the field to find yourself on a map. All right, it's going to be hard to talk about how to use a compass without first understanding what all the different parts are for. So let's go through that real quick. This is the base plate. It's clear, so you can see the map below it. And there's always at least one straight edge that you'll use later for taking bearings. On the side, there are rulers that you can use along with your map scale to help you calculate distance. On top, you'll find a direction of travel arrow to remind you which direction to point the compass when you're taking a bearing. This big circle is the rotating bezel, which is marked with degrees from 0 clockwise up to 360. Above the bezel is a little marker called the index line, which marks where you'll read your bearings. Inside the bezel, the first thing you'll notice is the magnetized needle, which always points to the magnetic North Pole, not the true North Pole. We'll get into the difference in a minute. There's also a big arrow called the orienting arrow, which you'll use to help you orient the bezel. Alongside the orienting arrow are orienting lines that you'll use to help you line up the compass with north on a map. Finally, some compasses have a handy declination scale, which makes it easier to adjust declination. What's declination, you ask? Well, declination is the angle difference between true north and magnetic north. The needle in your compass will only point to magnetic north, so right now it's pointing to somewhere in northern Canada, not Santa's workshop. If you don't adjust your compass to account for the difference between magnetic north and true north, it can really mess up your navigation. Depending on where you are in the country, the declination will be a certain number of degrees to either the west or the east. You can find the direction and number of degrees in the declination diagram near the legend, along with the date of the map's most recent revision. If your map hasn't been revised for several years, it's worth looking up the current declination online. Different compass brands set declination in different ways, and once you know the declination for your region, you can put that information into your compass. When you do, and the needle lines up inside the orienting arrow, the north marker on the bezel will point to true north. This map of the Lake Tahoe area has a declination of 14 degrees east, and it was updated very recently. So we need to move the orienting arrow 14 degrees to the east. Now that the declination is set, you can start using your compass with your map. First off, a bearing describes a direction in terms of degrees. Bearings are way more precise than just saying go east or west. Instead, you can say to get to the lake, follow a bearing of 79 degrees. One of the most common ways to use a bearing is when you're out hiking and you want to head to a specific point, like a peak or your campsite. If you know where you are on a map, it's a simple process. Start by finding your current location on the map. Let's say we're here. Now set your compass on the map so that the straight side of the base plate lines up with your position. Next, find the point you want to head toward. Let's say it's this peak. And rotate the entire compass until it forms a line between your position and your destination. Make sure the direction of travel arrow is pointing in the direction of the peak. Once the compass is in position, rotate the bezel until the orienting lines are lined up with north and south on the map. You can use the edge of the map to help you get the lines positioned just right. Remember to make sure that the north marker on the bezel is pointing to north on the map and not south. Okay, once the orienting lines are running north-south, look at the index line to read the bearing you've just captured. Here, it's 188. Congrats! Now you can use the compass to follow the bearing. Hold the compass in front of you with the direction of travel arrow pointing away from you. Now rotate your whole body until the north side of the magnetized needle is inside the orienting arrow. If it helps, you can remember red in the shed. Once you've got red in the shed, you're facing the bearing of 188 and your destination. If you're out hiking and you want to find your location on a map, you can also take a bearing off a landmark near you. Then you can transfer that bearing to your map and figure out where you are. Start by finding a landmark that you can also identify on your map. Hold your compass up with the direction of travel arrow pointing away from you and directly at the landmark. Now keep the compass flat and rotate the bezel until the magnetized needle is inside the orienting arrow, or red is in the shed. Once the needle is in, you've captured the bearing. A compass with a sighting mirror makes it easy to take very accurate bearings. Hold the compass at eye level and point it at the object. Then tilt the mirror until you can see straight down into the bezel. This way you can see the object and the bezel at the same time. Once you've got the bearing, you can transfer it to the map. Lay your compass on the map and line up its edge with a known landmark. Make sure that the direction of travel arrow is pointing in the direction of the landmark. With the edge of the compass lined up against the object, rotate the entire base plate until the orienting lines are running north-south and the north marker on the bezel is pointing to north on the map. Once you've finished, you can draw a line on the map along the edge of your compass. You are somewhere along this line. If you want to find your exact position, you use a process called triangulation. All you have to do is take another bearing, but with a different object that's at least 60 degrees away from the first. Where the two lines intersect is your position. If you take a third bearing, you'll end up with a little triangle, and the smaller the triangle, the more accurate the reading. Compass skills can be daunting at first, but they get way easier with practice. Watch the video a few times to get familiar with the techniques, and then test them out on your favorite trail. And for more practice and a deeper dive into navigation, click here to find a navigation class near you.
All right, so did everybody get all that?
Uh-huh.
It's okay if you didn't, because like they said, you really do have to practice, but to show you the different kinds of compasses, this is the kind of compass that I have. That's my whistle. This is the kind of compass that comes on that I have on my pack with my hand sanitizer, right? So you can see that I can't adjust this at all, right? So that all this is going to do on a simple trail is just tell me in general which way is north, right? The more complicated one is this one. It's a little bit heavier and you have to line it up. And that takes practice, and it actually takes setting it on top of a map and like doing it like they said. And like I said in the beginning, that's a little bit hard to do online. You want to set this on top of a map. So if this is interesting to you and you think you're going to need this level of navigation, go get a map, get a compass like this and start practicing. And you can do it online. You don't have to take a class with REI. And then if you're on a hike with me and you want to do it, I always have a compass with me and I always have the map with me. So we can go over it together. Some tips that I have found super helpful in not getting lost just on a 2-mile trail. If you have to go to the bathroom in the woods and you have a trekking pole, right? Take the handle of your trekking pole, and your handle either has like it'll have a loop on it, you know, to put around your wrist, that side of it. So when you're using your trekking poles, you're supposed to have your hands through the loops on your trekking poles. Take that handle where the loop is on that side and point that in the direction that you want to go. I do that every time I go to the bathroom. I put one trekking pole at the trail, pointing in the direction, the handle pointing in the direction of which way I need to go when I'm done. And I make sure that wherever I go pee, I can see that trekking pole. I don't go anywhere where I can't see that trekking pole. That way I don't get lost in the woods, right? If you don't use trekking poles, you can make cairns. Leave no trace folks aren't huge fans of cairns because it does impact the environment, but a cairn is a stack of rocks. So if you don't have a trekking pole, make a little stack of rocks and then point like the sharpest edge of the stone on top toward the way you're going, right? And then make sure that you can see that cairn wherever you go pee. Do the same thing if you're backpacking, point your door in the direction that you need to go in the morning, right? So I do my trekking pole outside of my tent facing in the right direction, but if it's windy, that could blow over. If you use a trekking pole tent, you won't be able to use your trekking poles in that way. So point your door in the direction you are going. That way in the morning, you always know, I always face my door in the way that I'm going. And that way, when I'm groggy in the morning, I know which way I'm going. So I do those kinds of things. I've used cairns. Ducks are like cairns, but they're different kinds of rocks. And we use cairns for trail markers above tree line because there's no trees to put blazes on, right? So that's a little helpful hint. Does anybody have any other helpful hints for things they do for backcountry navigation? I taught you the 3-finger rule for the sunset, 15 minutes a finger.
I've done that at crossroads on trails. I would take a stick, actually sometimes 3 sticks, a longer one and 2 shorter ones to make an arrow and just kind of put it on the edge of the trail. When I get back, I could tell which one I have to go to because
that's a great idea.
And everything looks different if you're looking one way coming and then going back the other way. Sometimes it looks so totally different that you don't remember. So
that's a really great trick.
And sometimes people mess with them, you know, just like people hiking, pick it up and play with the stick or a dog or something. So you sometimes lose it, but most times it's there when you get back.
That's a great tip. Any other great tips?
Go with somebody who knows where they're going.
Go with somebody. If you go as a new hiker, you should be going on well-established trails, right? And the trails should be very clear. So, you know, you're not, as new hikers, we have that advantage, right? We're not hiking in the back country where nobody's ever going to find us again. And we're only going on very short hikes. We're doing 3-mile hikes. So we're going to go back the way we came and we're not going to be that far from civilization ever. Some of our a little more advanced backpacking trips that we're going to do that I'm not familiar with, I will definitely be having working with the map ahead of time and having a true map read with the ranger before we go.
Beth, one thing you didn't mention about blazes, if people are just following blazes and not using compasses or anything, you know, if you can't find the next blaze, sometimes turn around and look. Do you see a blaze going in the other direction? Because at least you know you're still on the trail. And if you can't find the trail, backtrack until you find a blaze before you keep on going the wrong way.
Yep, that is very good. Yes, that is absolutely, that is what I do a lot of times. If I can't see it in front of me, I turn around and look for it behind me. And then I backtrack my steps to see if I can find it. Because you can get off a trail pretty quickly, especially like deer trails will often look like regular trails. Like deer, like the deer that run through that, they'll make their own little paths, and beavers, because I hike a lot by water, there are beaver trails that often look like very well established trails and end up being, but if you have your map and you know that you're supposed to be near water, like I do usually hike near water. So I always kind of gauge myself based on the water that's near me.
Another challenge in Pennsylvania, the state game landmarks are white blotches. They're not really blazes, but you can get really mixed up. A lot of through hikers get mixed up when they come on areas like that.
That Lehigh Gap, we have that here. We have that exact problem. So I pick up a lot of lost Appalachian hikers because they followed the we call it the Woods Trail, but it's like State Game Lands Trail, and they get lost and they end up in Lehigh Gap Nature Center. They end up off the mountain because they followed those blotches, and they are blotches. They're not the uniform white blazes that the AT uses. So you guys have been a great audience. I'm going to post the recording of the video in our meetup group. 2 weeks from now, we have our next one, which is either tent or cooking. I think next time is tents versus hammocks. We're going to have some hikers here to talk about the benefits of both. I'm a tent person, but there are people who use hammocks that like that. And then our fourth one is cooking. We'll be doing live cooking demos and showing you how to cook on trail if you want to learn how to do that. So thank you everybody for coming. I wish you a great week and enjoy the nice sunshine out. Get out hiking.
I went hiking
Beth.
today.
Appreciate it.
Did you go hiking today? Yay. Who went
Thank you,
hiking
Beth.
today?
See you on the
Thank you.
trail.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank